so that I don't forget. So we are recording, and we'll wait just a minute because it's not quite 5 o'clock yet, or whatever time it is, whatever time zone you are all in.
2 o'clock.
Okay. So it's 5. So what I'd like to do is ask everyone who's on to mute yourself if you are not talking. And we have a group chat box. If you don't want to talk, you can ask a question by typing it into the chat box. If you do want to talk, you can unmute yourself, and Michelle and we're listening. So if you say, I have a question, you can interrupt us. This is for you, right? And so this, I'll talk for a little bit. I got my labeling presentation, but then it's Q&A. So in an effort to get started, Michelle, do you want to say hi and introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce myself?
I sure can. Hi, everybody. Hi, Beth. Hi, the group. It looks like we have a good group here today, which is awesome. I am Michelle Lefebvre. I have been an instructor for classes 601 and 602 for about 8 months now, and I am a registered dietitian. My focus in my career has been mostly culinary nutrition, specializing in food allergies in the recent years, doing a lot of fun stuff around food and menu planning and culinary. So lots of exciting things. It's always fun to do these Zooms with Beth. Beth and I have been working together for many years, and I will let her take it away.
All right, so we're here to answer questions, and just one housekeeping thing. I have a feeling that the person who's on the phone, if you can mute yourself, I think it might make all of our sound much better. So if that's possible.
Yeah, I can't mute them. Can you mute them, Beth?
Oh, okay, I think we're good. Thank you very much. So I'm Beth McKee, and what we've done here is, okay, I've muted all. What we've done here, what Michelle and I have done, is there are so many Dr. Levitsky classes going on simultaneously that what we've decided to do is kind of bounce around some different nutrition topics where one or the other of us talks about something that's relevant to any of the classes, and we invite all of the students. So there are hundreds of students who could have been here today, but we've got about 20 of you or so here, which is fantastic. And so to get you to come, to entice you to come, we picked a topic. And so I'll talk a little bit about the topic, and you can ask questions, and then we'll open it up just to general questions about anything. So I'd like to welcome everybody, and I'm going to share my screen and start talking about the nutrition labels. And I'm going to share my screen if I can figure out how to do it. Here we go. Okay, so right now on the screen, what you're looking at is a PDF about the new nutrition labels. And so in 2016, the Food and Drug Administration announced the new nutrition facts label. And it's for all packaged foods, and it's new because it's designed to reflect new scientific information, including the link between diet and chronic diseases such as obesity and heart disease. And in theory, the new label will make it easier for consumers to make better informed food choices. So the FDA published the final rules in 2016, and the new label, you might start to see it popping up now, but manufacturers with $10 million or more in annual sales, they have to switch by January 1st, 2020. And then manufacturers that are smaller have a whole extra year to comply. So the iconic look of the label is staying the same, but there are some really key things that are changing, and it will be interesting for you to know as a consumer, but it's also interesting for you to know that there's a method to the madness and maybe why this is happening now that you are tuned in to nutrition and nutrition claims, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the things that you'll notice is that the type size for calories is much bigger, and servings per container is much bigger, right? And serving size. So things are bolded there. And so the idea is they want to increase how much they highlight that information. Okay. So the highlights are kind of written on the side, and it's really small here. So I can talk about each of these things and maybe embellish it. I have some additional information here, but so the first thing that changed is the serving sizes. And I want you to think about whether you think this is a positive or negative health encouragement, but the number of serving sizes, not just the type size, but the serving sizes themselves have changed to reflect what people are eating. So the example that they give is for ice cream. Previously, a serving size was half a cup of ice cream. And so when we talk to people about serving sizes, you know, a serving size was on the label, was supposed to be used so people could compare things, apples to apples, or as it were, ice cream to ice cream, to look at the calories per serving, right? So the serving size increased from a half to 2/3 of a cup because we eat more ice cream. Another one that changed is, let's see, the reference amount that was used for a serving of soda is changing from 8 ounces to 12 ounces. So think about whether you think that's a good thing or not. We're eating more, so we should, you know, it kind of reminds me of people are getting fatter, so your clothing sizes, you know, are different. So a size 8 20 years ago is different than a size 8 now. Anyway, it's just something to consider. The other thing about packages is that package size affects what people eat. So for packages that are between 1 and 2 servings, such as a 20-ounce soda or a 15-ounce can of soup, because of the package, and I don't know the nuances of this, but because of the package, they're going to have to call the package 1 serving. So look for that. That's coming. And the other thing that might happen is that you'll have a dual label. Well, there'll be 1 column for a serving and 1 column for if you eat the whole package. So that's one of the things that's happening. Another very interesting thing.
Excuse me, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Will you be able to send us this visual?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a PDF and I've got it easy to send. So another thing that's happening is that calories from fat is being removed. So on the current label, you can see it up towards the top next to calories. And that is because research shows that the type of fat is more important than the amount of fat. And so what you'll see there in total fat is you'll see saturated fat and trans fat. And that, it brings me to say something about trans fats, especially for people who've gone through the class where they talk, David Levitsky's class where you talk about fats. In this day and age, most of the trans fats that are used in food manufacturing are no longer used in food manufacturing. However, there are some naturally occurring trans fats in small amounts in foods like meat. And so it might be a moot point, like why bother having trans fat if nobody is using it anymore? But my opinion is that's going to have to wait till the next iteration, because there might be manufacturers still using trans fats. And Michelle, you might actually know more about that than I do, since you read so many labels. Okay, the next thing that's happening is if you look on the under carbohydrate and you look at sugars, and this will resonate a little more with people who've gone through the modules where we talk about carbohydrates. You'll see total carbohydrates, dietary fiber, and sugars, 12 grams on the current label. If you look at the new label, it's added sugars, and so this is so confusing to consumers, because everyone's talking about cutting sugars out of the diet. So sugars on the left-hand side in the nutrition facts label reflects all the disaccharides, whether they're naturally occurring or not. So milk has lactose. It would tell you that a milk product has X grams of sugar. But on the new label, it is going to reflect only added sugar. And there's a whole list, there's like 20 pages probably in this 134-page document about how to determine what added sugar means. So we're not going to go into that, but that is kind of a huge thing. So added sugars is in grams, and it's also as a percentage of daily value. And so scientific data shows that it's difficult to meet nutritional needs while staying within calorie limits if you consume more than 10% of your total daily calories from added sugar. Okay, if you want to know about regular, not added sugar, just total disaccharides, that number is actually 25% that you shouldn't go above. And so this is consistent with the latest dietary guidelines. So let me stop there. Any questions?
Well, I'm kind of curious as to why this was changed with the added sugars.
This was done by a committee, so I don't want to guess why they did it, but if I had to,
Yeah.
if I had to guess,
Right.
it is because naturally occurring sugars are natural,
Right.
and they're theoretically good for you, just like all, food is good for you. Why would you avoid fruit? It's
Right.
all 100% natural sugars.
Right.
And now that we have the technology to be able to define and pull out the added sugars, people who are interested in knowing and reducing their percentage of added sugars can do so more easily without deciding not to eat certain foods or food groups.
Okay.
I have a question as well, Beth. You mentioned that we should aim for no more than 10% total calories from added sugar, but then you went into 25%, so I'm not sure whether you mean stay within the range of 10 to 25, or and it would be per portion, or you're looking at the total.
No, I have good skills at confusing people, and so that was me.
There's a lot of information.
You know what? So all of our guidelines come from the DRI guidelines, which I'm not going into today because it's too detailed. But the current ones say that if you consume more than 25% of your calories from sugars, not added sugars, just sugars, it's different. Added sugars, they say 10% of your calories from added sugars, right? The rest of it is all natural sugars in theory.
Okay.
And so that's the difference. And so when you say 10% of your calories from added sugars, what that means in reality is if you're consuming 2,000 calories a day, that's 200 calories, right? And 200 divided by 4 is 50. That would be 50 grams of added sugars a day. I think I did that math right.
It's okay. I understand. Thank you so much, Beth.
Mhm.
Awesome.
I have a question as well.
Okay.
If something says no sugar added, so theoretically, say like a yogurt or something, it could still have sugar in it. It just doesn't have the sugar additives, correct? The artificial sugars or some of the chemicals?
Well, so
Or if
think
something says sugar-free?
of sugar.
Because those are very misleading.
Yes, they are. It's very confusing. So, and Michelle, please jump in if you want to add something. But think of sugar as disaccharides. Disaccharides, if you haven't gotten to this yet in Levitsky's class, you will. Stay tuned. Disaccharides, glucose, sucrose, all the, lactose, all of those sugars that are sweet, the things, fructose, that are in your fruits, those are all sugars. They're simply disaccharides. Added sugar it's the same thing. Added sugar could be you've added grape juice concentrate or you've added table sugar. But when no added sugars, it can still have disaccharides. So you are correct.
I say, right, because I know that it's misleading, and a lot of things that say no sugar added, people think are sugar-free, but they're not.
And anything with carbohydrates is going to break down into sugar eventually. Because that's, I mean, we live on glucose. Everything breaks down into glucose for our blood. That's what keeps us alive.
I have a question. Does your body really know any difference between one sugar? Do we process in our bodies, like if I eat a bowl of fruit, does it differentiate the way it's processed in our body versus having sugar?
That's an it depends question. And
what's that mean?
It's an it depends question because there's a lot of research going on, as you know, with how our bodies process fructose and how our bodies process sugar and high fructose foods and, all of this stuff. And then when our body breaks down more complex carbohydrates and starches, what does that mean in our body? And then if it's in combination with another food, if it's in combination with fiber, does it break down differently? And so it's a very it depends question. So and our body and our body's gut health and what it does with all of that. It's a very complicated science, and we don't know the answers to a lot of it, but these are the kinds of questions that I think are important.
Yeah, so Beth, there's also another question from Caroline. Is the difference in recommended daily value just based on natural, in quotes, versus artificial, in quotes, taking into account that foods with natural occurring sugars probably also contain more fiber?
So yes, that is part of the multi-page definition of added sugars. So if you add honey, it's a natural sugar, but you're adding it to a food that doesn't normally have honey, right? So, and it goes through this in the instructions for the manufacturers. So think how much they're going to be pulling their hair out. Honey, if you sell honey, it doesn't have any added sugars. It just is a sugar. But if you add honey to another product, or if you add something else that is defined as a sugar to a product where it wasn't originally there, then they're going to have to claim it, even if it's natural. So should I keep going? There's just a little bit more. There's not much more, and then we can do some wider Q&A. So, okay. The list of nutrients that are required to be above that big, thick line have changed. And so in the current label, the old label, everything above it is required and everything below it is optional. And so what the change is that calcium and iron are going to stay. I don't even see, oh, I'm sorry. They're not optional. Calcium and iron are going to stay. What's below that thick line is, I'm sorry, required. But vitamin A and C are going to go. And what is going to come is vitamin D and vitamin K. And the reason why is because research is showing us that we are, as a population, very low on getting enough vitamin D from our food and vitamin K. And the health reason is that vitamin D is related to bone health, and that's very important. As you know, we have osteoporosis issues in our country. And vitamin K, not vitamin K, potassium. Did I say vitamin K? I'm sorry. It's 5 o'clock here in New York. I meant potassium, which is represented by the letter K in the periodic chart. Potassium is related to blood pressure. Phew. I might be done. Let's see what else it says. The daily values for nutrients have also been updated based on newer scientific evidence. And so the daily values are reference amounts of nutrients to consume or not to exceed. And so it used to be, I think I can explain this. Michelle, jump in if you have a better way to explain it. But it used to be that the numbers were just the RDAs, the recommended daily intakes, and they were amounts at which we would not be deficient if we ate. Now these DRIs, this is this very complex list of charts, and the thing is, it's all based on research. And so for some vitamins and minerals, there are upper limits. For some, there are lower limits. For some, there are upper and lower limits. And that's because there's enough research to determine how much we need for what reason. For others, there's not that much information, and we still revert to the old numbers that we use. So these charts are constantly being updated, and the labels are reflecting the fact that we have more information now. Personally, when I'm working with customers, I have them look at the raw data, the actual number, the grams of fat, etc., rather than a percentage of a daily value, because it's just harder for people to see how that fits into a complete day's worth of food. So I think the last thing is, and this is impossible for you to read, but the little footnote on the bottom is being changed, and it's helping to explain the percent of daily value. And I don't know if anyone's going to read that, but it's there for consumers to read. Phew. So that's the new label in a nutshell, and a little bit of information behind where that comes from. And so at this point, I would love to just open it up to questions about this topic or anything else that's on your mind. You've got two dietitians. We may or may not know the answer, but there are two of us here to help answer any questions that you have.
I have one. First of all, I have a comment on your explanations. It's very clear. It's helpful in understanding the daily values and so on. And I don't know if Canada is going to be adopting them, but very often we follow pretty much the same FDA and the Canadian dietary recommendations and so on. one of the things I find particularly difficult to understand in the classes or in the discourses, whatever, however you want to couch them, is the Krebs cycle. Is there is there an easy way to just explain the Krebs cycles?
No, there's no easy way to.
Okay, so go back, listen to it again. Sorry.
So yes, the Krebs cycle can really it's very frustrating because it's hard to understand, and when Dr. Levitsky talks, he talks as if, oh yeah, everyone knows the Krebs cycle.
My understanding, if I may, is that it explains how food is translated into energy. Am I correct?
You are correct.
Okay, good. I'm on the right path. Thanks.
So this is what you can do, and I totally recommend this if you're that interested. You can go to YouTube and look up videos of the Krebs cycle, and you can watch 10 different ones, and with each one you'll pick up just a little hint because of the fact that it's explained a little bit differently. And it might be helpful to you. Yeah, I mean, in this day and age, a lot of questions can be answered by going to the internet, but it's not always good. But for the Krebs cycle, I think it's okay.
That's a good suggestion, Beth. I like that.
Thanks.
I've never done it.
Maybe I'll pull together a few of the best YouTube videos on the Krebs cycle and send it out, because of course 602 covers the Krebs cycle. So that's a good idea.
That's right. So for all of you in 601, you have something to look forward to.
It's coming.
Oh,
Right around the corner.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to read some other questions that were in the group chat. What resources do you as professionals in the field of nutrition track stay current with new information? And I can answer first. I'm right now I'm finishing a graduate degree in hospitality, and I think that's been my biggest focus in being able to stay relevant with any kind of current in terms of nutrition, but also the larger umbrella of hospitality. And generally what it does is it makes me, some group projects or papers, I tend to focus on health and healing, and then really digging into what's available, information that's available, what's current. I admit that the group projects for 601 and 602, there's a lot of crap analysis, as you guys have either gone through crap analysis or are knee deep in crap analysis. And that also keeps me, it's sometimes a little bit of a rabbit hole, because I'll read one article and then go find another article and then go find another article. And it's been really fun to keep me relevant. I have been, learning all sorts of things because everyone's coming at it with new and different approaches. And so that's been keeping me really relevant too. But as nutrition professionals, we have a license that we need to keep up, and we have continuing education credits that we need to keep going. Every 5 years, we need to, I think it's 75 credits. Beth achieved 75 continuing education credits. And we log them and we keep track, and usually it's sort of relevant to what you're doing. But there's also many conferences out there, there's a lot of free webinars and webinars that are available through credible sources. So that's another way to stay relevant. But those are my top ways that I do it personally.
Yeah, and it's through, we get a journal, and we get other publications that are specific to our industry, and they always post the latest research, so we get to see what's coming down the pike and what the trends are.
I'm going to read the other question I have from Caroline. I have two questions that are very different and unrelated. So number one, we're always told that we need to drink X amount of water or fluids and the importance of drinking water, but I'm wondering if there's actually a difference as far as hydrating power of drinking water versus drinking other fluids such as juice, coffee, alcohol, etc., other than caloric value. Do you want to take it?
I'll do that one.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure. So yes, what they don't tell you is that there's a lot of places where you get water in your day. And if you've ever eaten anything that was dehydrated, you know there used to be water in it. So water, comes from coffee, comes from tea, comes from wine and beer and your gin and tonic, and it comes, or maybe my gin and tonic, and it's in your food and your fruits and even in your meat, in your rice, in your spaghetti. And the way to know that you are consuming enough water is if your urine is light yellow. As it gets darker, that's kind of an indication that you need to have more fluid in your diet. That said, certain foods act more like a diuretic than others. So coffee might be more of a diuretic than plain water. But if you were completely dehydrated and all you had was a cup of coffee, it would hydrate you. The idea of 8 glasses of water a day was a generalization, and there are certain times when more water might be recommended to someone if you are suffering from some illness or if you are losing a lot of weight fast, or if you had bariatric surgery. You know, there are reasons to have more water, but it's mostly looking at your urine, making sure it's lighter yellow.
Great, I'm going to keep reading. Is there actually a direct link between sugar consumption and diabetes or obesity? I've been seeing that there isn't really one. That's still Caroline. You want to keep going, Beth?
I'll keep going. Why not?
I'll take the next two. You go ahead.
Okay. So diabetes is related to being overweight and to having insulin resistance. And if we're talking about type 2 diabetes, type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease, but type 2 diabetes has a lot to do with the whole system getting out of kilter. And sugar itself does not cause diabetes. There's not one thing that causes it. People could be predisposed. It could have a genetic factor, but sugar is related to weight gain, and sugar is also related to the insulin system getting out of kilter. So it really depends on, every individual digests sugar or digests food in a different way. So in some cases, having very high amounts of sugar can exacerbate insulin resistance. And that can increase your risk for type 2 diabetes. You want to add anything to that, Michelle?
No, well said. I'm going to keep going down the list of all these questions. So Hava asked, can you cite the names of publications that would be important for us to read and or books? So I think, that really depends on the type of information that you're looking for, but also the level of reading. There is the organization that sort of oversees registered dietitians and guides them in terms of research and information is the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. They have a really solid website with a lot of information for the general public. Some people like Today's Dietitian, which is a monthly publication that comes out and has a variety of webinars as well as relevant articles that are generally scientifically credible, however, kind of boil it down in again, the general public kind of written way. I'm doing something I'm suggesting publications that are not necessarily scientific journals. So those are the ones that are, I think, pretty approachable. But there's also websites too. I like the Harvard School of Public Health has a great set of information. I always like anyone that's doing crap analysis, and they always see that I love healthline.com because I think it's always they always provide solid references and great information. So those are some that come to mind for me. I don't know if you have any that you want to add in, Beth.
I was trying to find this book. So I bought a book from the Dietetic Association, and it's called like Complete Nutrition. And I thought, well, this might be interesting. And as I read through it, it really is. I can't find the name of it. I'm on the website right now looking, and
okay. Well,
yeah,
maybe
I think I'll have to send it out.
I'm going to keep going down this list. From Jody, on the nude food label, what will be the food allergen listing requirements be? And could you explain may contain versus made in a facility? I can definitely explain those things. On the new food label, there will not be a change in the food allergen listing. The requirements will continue to be the top 8, which the top 8 food allergies are the ones that hit 90% of the top 90% of the food allergies that exist today in the world. And they include dairy, egg, fish, shellfish, soy, wheat, and there's tree nuts and peanuts. So those are the 8. So those will be listed, and then also gluten. Right now being considered, and I think, Louise might be able to back me up on this, sesame is added in the European food label, and I'm pretty sure the Canadian food label, but I know it's in the European food label, and it's being considered in the United States as well. Louise, is it on the Canadian food label?
I haven't noticed it yet.
Okay.
I can check it out real quickly.
She's gonna go right to the kitchen. But it is added, it is included on the European food label, the European Union food label, and it's being considered in the United States, but no changes for food allergies. Nope, it's not there, huh?
Not there.
The second part of that question was contains versus made in a facility. The FDA requirements for food allergens listed on a food label, all of the requirements are if the food contains one of those ingredients. There is actually no requirements as per the FDA. So the FDA does all the regulations for the food labels. There are no requirements if the facility does any food manufacturing with any of those ingredients. You do not need to label it if it's made in a facility or made. Sometimes you'll see also made on the same equipment. There are no requirements. So generally, if a food manufacturing company puts that on the label, it's what we call the CYA, otherwise known as cover your ass, for that company. And you'll see it more and more now. Unfortunately, it's the companies just saying, hey, be careful. But I will tell you, so this is a great sort of anecdotal story about Lender's Bagels. I was working with somebody that had actually a sesame and an egg and a tree nut allergy. And we were struggling to find her just a quick breakfast. And I asked her about bagels, and she said I'd never had a bagel because, well, most bagels are contaminated with sesame. So I started doing some research on trying to find a bagel company that we could find a bagel for her. And I did my first stab was going online. Let me look online and see if there were any companies. And Lenders, I had found something from another customer. So I looked into Lenders. Well, Lenders has that made in the same facility. So I called because, again, I never rely on that statement for any company. And the first time I talked to somebody, they said, "Oh yeah, all of our bagels are made in the same facility as Sesame." Well, I didn't accept that. So I called back and got a second person. "Oh yeah, all of our bagels are made in the same facility." And so I actually at that point said, "Can I talk to somebody that perhaps can give me some more concrete information?" As it turns out, there are 3 different types of lender bagel facilities. There's the fresh lender bagel, there's the refrigerated, and there's the frozen. And any of the refrigerated Lender's bagels are 100% egg and sesame free. And as it turns out, all of the Lender's bagels bags, whether they're fresh, frozen, or refrigerated, have the statement may contain other allergens. So oftentimes I'll advise people, or I'll do it myself, go and dig into these labels, because unfortunately, as of right now, and there is no future, and at least in the short-term future, regulation on may contain versus made in a facility versus made on the same equipment. Next question, Hava, on citing vitamin D and potassium, does a deficiency in the population mean that more potassium will reduce high blood pressure, that we do not consume enough potassium? Do you want me to take that?
So I think the amount of potassium we're supposed to, I don't even know it off the top of my head, is like 2,300 milligrams of potassium a day.
It's 3,500.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, well, no, because it's confusing, because the 2,300 of the sodium and the 3,500 of the potassium.
And so potassium is found in fruits and vegetables and dairy and other places. And if you eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, you'll probably get the amount of potassium that you need. And as you know, most people, at least in this country, don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. And so, yes, you need to get that 3,500 milligrams. And this is all population science. So as a population, if the population gets more potassium, in theory, blood pressure will come down. So that's kind of the thinking behind it.
Thank you.
And just one final thought though, in general, our potassium and sodium ratios are, what we really want to aim for is a lot more potassium than sodium in our diet. Mm-hmm. And generally we're getting a lot more sodium than potassium. And so, like Beth said, the easiest way to do that is fruits and vegetables. Next question, do no sugar added juices, sugar content, are they included in the new label?
If they follow the rules, this should work. So if you have 100% orange juice, it should say added sugars, 0. Because unless they add sugar to it, even if it's from concentrate. So
yeah, sorry, there is a feedback. That question wasn't formulated right, but yeah, the question is like there are some no added sugar juices, like let's say apple juice that they have kids in the little boxes, and yes, no added sugar. But it's very hard for me to believe that they just like blend an apple and put it there because it's so sweet. So maybe the sugar, there is no added sugar, but there is concentrated sugar from apples. So I'm just like curious to know how is that going to work.
Oh, that's such a good question. I don't know the definition. So if it's pure apple juice is very sweet. Grape juice is very sweet. And their concentrates are super sweet. But you're saying if you had pure apple juice, right? Think of apple cider. That's pure apple juice. If it wasn't sweet enough and they added concentrated apple juice, would they have to say it? I'm going to guess that yes, but I don't know for sure because I haven't read all the fine print.
Okay, I see. Thanks.
Yeah,
Next-
it's a good question.
Next question from Lori. We learned that we get most of our vitamin needs from consuming a variety of foods, but I don't remember learning about vitamin D supplements. Are they a good source versus simply food?
I'm happy to answer that unless you want to take it, Michelle.
No, go ahead, for sure.
So vitamin D, it's an odd vitamin. You know, we have to take vitamins and minerals. We have to get vitamins and minerals from our food because our body doesn't produce them, and they help all our bodily functions work properly. Vitamin D is one that the body can make it from the sun, right? If you get sun exposure, it increases your body's production of vitamin D. So ideally, we get it from the sun and we get it from food. But because of all the new research that is coming out with vitamin D, a lot of physicians, doctors, health practitioners are prescribing supplements to people and saying that, you know, it can't hurt if you take a supplement, simply because maybe people aren't getting that much vitamin D or eating foods or even have the capacity to eat enough vitamin D containing foods. And so, yeah, I mean, the supplements are a perfectly good source, and for a lot of people, it's their only source of vitamin D. One of the new things kind of coming down the pike is getting your vitamin D tested. Some people on this webinar might have had their vitamin D tested already. It's not a common practice, but I think it's becoming more common. And that's how you would know if you weren't getting enough.
It's, if I may say so, in Canada anyways, in Quebec, it's part of the annual checkup. It's part of the, you know, what gets checked in blood work. But very few people have a sufficient level. We live in the north, days are shorter, what can I say? So yeah. The question remains here is, do you actually need more, or has our body adjusted to working with less? I really don't know, but I've toyed with taking supplements, and you know, right now I'm favoring finding it in foods rather than adding, you know, supplements. But it's, I wonder, unlike other vitamins, it's one that you can't really overdose on, if I'm correct.
Oh, you can.
You can.
Oh. Yes, vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. And so A, D, E, and vitamin K, the 4 fat-soluble vitamins, get processed through the liver, and you can't overdose if you take one vitamin D pill or the recommended vitamin D. But if you look at the upper limit, it's one of the ones that has an upper limit. If you go higher than the upper limit, it gets overloaded in your liver, and that can cause some problems.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
So Louise, you mentioned food sources of vitamin D. I think, you know, just really quickly, it's you know, good to review some of the food sources. I mean, the standard food source of vitamin D is milk, right? Because they're actually fortifying milk with vitamin D. But you can get vitamin D in eggs, and salmon has it. And another food that no one thinks of having vitamin D, which is really rich in vitamin D, is actually mushrooms.
Oh,
mushrooms are a great source of vitamin D.
Thank you.
Okay, so I remember reading somewhere that vitamin D needs to be taken with I think maybe K or K2 to actually be absorbed. Back to what Beth said, you need fat to be able to absorb vitamin D. So as long as you have some fat in your diet when you're eating it, then that's the best way to absorb it.
It's generally not a problem.
Well, you know, it's kind of funny though, because a lot of people drink skim milk, and you know, if you're eating just cereal and milk for breakfast, you're not getting the fat. So you know, having a little bit of the fat in your day when you're eating the sources of vitamin D is definitely key. Next question. You guys are awesome with these questions. I love it. How does salt not impact high blood pressure when diuretics are being prescribed? Lori's laughing.
It's the end of our. Okay, let me start, and then I'll let you finish. How about that?
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay. All right. So if you have high blood pressure, it means that your with each beat of the heart, it's just like the hose with too much water in it. It's beating harder to get through the pipe, and to lower the blood pressure, a diuretic lowers your blood volume. It makes you pee out water. And so if you're peeing out water, I think what the question is referring to, maybe you're peeing out salt with the water. And so, I don't exactly know how to answer that question. I will say there are guidelines for sodium, and it is this 2,500 milligrams per day or 2,300 milligrams per day, which probably most of us eat more than that. And so if you're sodium sensitive, then sodium will make your blood volume go up. If you're sodium sensitive, you would eat salty soup and you'd feel your fingers get bigger because of the water retention. But most people are not sodium sensitive, so it's a global rule, just in case, for everyone to eat less salt. And we do need more potassium, less sodium. But in terms of the diuretic, honestly, I don't know the answer to that question.
Hey, Beth, is it covered in any of the courses? I haven't gone through all of the modules. Is the sodium potassium balance covered at all?
No, sodium potassium balance isn't covered, but in DNS 606, the last one, they do talk, Dr. Levitsky talks about hypertension and sodium. So he does talk a lot about sodium and sodium sensitivity.
So Lori, it sounds like you will cover it. The thing to keep in mind, so 2,300 milligrams of sodium is recommended for the standard public, but 1,500 milligrams is recommended for people that are actually hypertensive. So if somebody does have high blood pressure, they are recommended to reduce their salt intake to 15.
Yeah.
But it kind of, what I felt like when I went through that module, it was more important that you get enough potassium or vitamin D, because that was more causation or related to the high blood pressure than strictly salt.
Well, I think a great way for us, anyone that's really studying and thinking about nutrition, and I know this is an approach that Beth and I both take, is focusing on what you should include in your diet as opposed to what you should not include on your diet. So if a person is so focused on, I can't eat this, I can't eat this, I can't eat this, as in all these high sodium things, it feels really restrictive and can really feel difficult. But conversely, if you're focusing on all the foods you should be eating, all the high potassium foods, all the fruits and vegetables, all the things that are really great for you, it feels a lot more of an approach, a diet of abundance, and it feels a lot more hopeful for sure. So, if you take a look at it that way, and I think that's the approach Levitsky is taking,
Mm-hmm.
it feels a lot more positive.
If you dig down into the medical world, there's a lot of controversy and a lot of arguing about sodium in the diet. And it's there. You can probably find it on the internet. So yeah, Dr. Levitsky's approach, I think, is very balanced and like focusing on what to do versus what not to do.
It looks like we've covered all the group chat questions. I am going to ask the group a question because Beth and I continually do this Zoom together, and I would love some ideas in terms of other topics that you guys might be interested in us covering as we go forward in the next modules? Are there things that are of particular interest that really stand out, that have been covered, that might, you really want to go into depth? Or you guys can either, unmute yourselves and mention it, or throw it into the group chat. But we're really interested in what topics you might be interested in.
There's just one for me, because I always find it difficult to calculate the percentages into grams and so on. So if there could be I don't know, maybe there is a list, I just didn't get to it yet, but of the different food groups and the recommended grams a day in an average diet.
Yes, we actually have that, Louise. What class are you up to?
Actually, I took food intake, body weight, I took exercise, I took nutrition and life and digestive system. I'm on carbohydrates right now.
Okay, so you've got 3 more classes. It's going to circulate back around, but
Okay.
yeah, so Michelle will do next month, and I'll do the month after that, and that's going to be what's called the AMDR guidelines.
Okay.
And so that will be that exact topic.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. I almost hate to let you go, but I have to go.
Thank you for joining us. Any other topic requests?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, great. Foods that cause inflammation in the body.
Okay.
And because I'm noticing that that's a very big arena right now, inflammatory diseases and what causes inflammation in the body. And there's a lot of controversy on that as well. But there are certain physicians, cardiologists, who do suggest that there are specific foods that, like fruit, they consider candy, and the same as candy, and other kinds of things that one puts into one's body that cause inflammation. And a lot of people are very innocent; they don't realize that. And then also the whole concept that right now, red meat, protein converts to sugar, which I found really shocking. I never knew that meat converts to sugar. That was a surprising thing. And so, those 2 areas would be interesting to me to see developed.
Okay, I saw a couple thumbs up for the inflammatory foods. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Pesticides.
Pesticides. Okay, so maybe the whole.
But this is my last course, so
Uh-huh.
I probably won't be invited anymore. We'll have fun with it.
Well, good luck with the final bit for you, Andrea. Okay, thank you for those thoughts. If anyone ends up thinking about something later on, feel free to ping Beth or I and
Exactly.
let us know.
Can I ask a question quickly? If this is our last class, I was with a different person the last couple times, and we didn't have anything like this. This would have been extremely helpful through the first 4. Is it possible to still join these even though we're ending our course, or no? Because this is amazing. This wasn't an option with my first 4 courses.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think you have to be in an eCornell class. That said, if someone you knew gave you the link, could you come?
I don't know if anyone else here is in their last course, but the first 4 had a different person. Yeah, and we barely even had office hours for questions, and if we had them, they were like the night before it was closing. And if you missed it because you couldn't be there, you were done. Like there was no opportunity really for questions. So.
Well, I'm glad to know this is valuable for people. Michelle and I just started doing this. I guess we were doing it separately, but we just started doing it together. And now that we know it's successful, maybe what we'll do is just get all the different classes, all the instructors, because there are a bunch of instructors.
Yeah, we've talked about that. I think.
All right. I can make that happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
it looks like
that I just feel, now that I've had this, I feel gypped on the other one.
I think it's good having all the classes combined in this and sharing information, and it makes it kind of exciting for those who haven't been through all the classes yet, because they know what's going to come along too.
All right.
Awesome. That's great feedback.
Yeah, this is good feedback. I will follow up with that.
It looks like some other topics would be gout diet, probiotics. So that's great. These are great, fantastic suggestions. So we'll take those back, and it looks like Beth knows the other instructors. I do not, but
I will find out who they are.
we will get everyone together, because sounds like this is working really well. So
Okay, awesome.
thanks for joining us.
All right, everyone, have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you all later. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.